Hello and welcome to another video from Dan's Tutorials. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at numbers for beginners. Now why would you want to learn about numbers over top of Excel or even Google Sheets? Well, I believe it has a user-friendly interface for organizing your data. It's feature-rich yet simple enough for beginners. Hopefully you'll see that by the end of this video. It syncs with iCloud, making your documents available on your iPad, your iPhone, or other Macs, or even online through iCloud.com. It also has a similar interface to the other iWork apps, Pages and Keynote. So if you'll learn numbers, I think you'll have an edge on learning about Pages and Keynote as well. Now, if you like what you see here, stick around to the end. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself and how you can help support me in creating these videos. All right, let's take a look at numbers. The first thing we're going to be looking at is the interface to numbers. Let's get a bird's eye view of the different sections that we have with numbers. Now I'm going to be showing you this on my MacBook Air. Also, I am using Mac OS Sonoma, just so you know. All right, so I am in numbers here. And let's go and take a look at the template chooser. This is usually where you get your first introduction into numbers. So I just go up over File here, and we're going to go New. And then you're going to see I can choose a template. Now, Apple has provided a number of different templates in here, and they're all really pretty good. So if you want to learn more about numbers, I would take a look at these templates. We can see that they're all categorized. And when we're looking at a specific category, if I go here to Personal, it looks like I might have just 4 different templates, maybe 5, but what you can do is you can swipe over to the left to view more templates. So there's quite a few templates in here. And at the end of the video, I'll show you how you can even create your own templates based off of your spreadsheets. This is also where you can view your most recent documents. So that's the template chooser. It's a great place to start learning about numbers. Now let's just go ahead and open up a numbers document. I'm actually going to close this, and I have this document here, which is going to help me explain the interface. So I'm looking at my numbers document here. I like to think of this as divided into 3 different areas here. The first area here, this area is called a sheet. This is almost like it's your canvas. So what you can do with this area here is you can add objects. When I select this table here, I do have a table on here, this is called an object. And what we're able to do is move these objects around and place them wherever we want on the sheet. I can go and add more objects. I can add a shape. I can go and add a chart. I can add another table. All of these are different objects, and what we're able to do is just move them around on that sheet. So think of a sheet as almost like it's a canvas. And if you want to zoom in and out, you can do that by going over to the left here. I can zoom out so I can see all of my different objects on there. And then I can also zoom in. You can also pinch if you have a trackpad to zoom in and out. I'm just going to delete that there. So that's our sheet, and we can have more than one sheet. You're going to see I have sales here. This is the sheet. It's like a worksheet in Excel. Well, what I'm able to do is just go and add another sheet, so then I have another canvas. So that is the sheet. The second part here is what I would call the toolbar. And this toolbar here is where we can go and add all of our different objects. It's also where we can go and zoom in and out. So again, I want to add a table. I can click on table. I want to add a chart. I want to add text. I can add pictures. I can add shapes. All of this is accessible through this toolbar. And then our third area, this is where we go and format and organize. Anything that we have selected, it could be a table, it could be text, it could be a shape, anything that we have selected. So let's go and add a shape here for simplistic terms here. So I have that shape there. I'm able to color it. I can go and change the border. I can add a shadow. If it had text in there, I'd be able to change the font, change the size. And being that these are just objects, I can also arrange them. So think of a deck of cards. All of these objects are on my canvas, on my sheet. Well, when you have multiple objects, you might want to layer them, place one on top of the other. With this on top of my table, I can't see the data. So maybe what I'd like to do is move that to the back. So I click on Arrange here, and then I'm able to move it to the back. So those are our different options for our sheet. Basically, we're building our spreadsheet through our sheets, our canvas. We can add objects through the toolbar, and then we can format whatever we have selected as well as arrange them. Now let's take a look at a table. We're going to take a look at a table up close. We know how the interface works with numbers. Now let's look at a table. So the anatomy of a table, this is a table here, and it has a bunch of data in here. The anatomy of a table is we have a title. I also have captions, which is just another title. We also have our cells, which is where our data is stored. This could be formulas, it could be text, it could be numbers. And then a table is comprised of these cells in rows and columns. So this here is a column. So I have this column selected. And this column shows me all of my power category. This column here is all of my revenue. And then over to the left, we can select rows. So now I'm just selecting these rows here. So that is the anatomy of a table. We have titles, we have captions, we have our cells, which are arranged in rows and columns. Now let's take a closer look at these rows and columns. Let's say I wanted to add some more columns to this. In order to do that, all I have to do is just go over to these vertical lines here, and then when I drag this over to the right, you're going to see that it is adding columns. And if I wanted to go and label it, I just click in there, and I can go and label that, and then I can start adding data. To remove it, we just drag it to the left. And you can't remove a column if there's any data in there. So if I were to drag this further over to the left, you're going to see that I can't delete any of those. That's because there's data in them. So you have to make sure that there's no data in them. We can do the same thing with rows. Just drag this up and down to add more rows. And again, if there's data in there, you can't remove them. In addition to adding and removing them, you can also hide them. So the data will still be in there, but you can't see it. So if I wanted to hide the revenue, all I have to do is just go to this little caret here. This is the arrow that is pointing down, and you're going to see that I have the option to hide the column. When I hide it, it is no longer there. So how can I show that column again? Well, basically all I have to do is just go to the caret here, and you're going to see I have the option to unhide all columns or unhide column E. So I'm just going to unhide all of them. We can do the same thing with rows, of course. Just click on the little caret, and then from here I can go and hide that row. If I hit it, I'd be able to show it again. The last thing I want to talk about with tables is our headers and footers. So if we look here, you're going to see that this first row here is all blue. This is where we have it all labeled. I can see what this data is. That is called a header row. And then this first column here is all of the dates. That is called a header column. And what basically these items do is just kind of give us a little bit of a label to our data. So I can see that this is all of my power information. This is how many units I've sold. This is my revenue. These are the months. So basically it just kind of gives us a little idea. Now, what we can do is we can add more headers and footers. To do that, what we do is we select the table, click on the little circle here to select it. That's the best way of selecting a table. When I click on this and I go over here to table, you're going to see that I have the option to modify my headers and footers. So right now I have one header column and one header row. And I do not have a footer row. Footer row is where you may want to add summaries to it. To add a second header row or column, we just go over to what we want to add. So let's say I wanted to add another header row. I select it, and now we can see we have two header columns. Now this isn't particularly good in this case because I don't want to have my data in there, so I'm going to bring it back over to 1. Another thing we can do is we can freeze that. You may have noticed when you scroll around in a spreadsheet, if you've worked with spreadsheets, when you scroll up, the data disappears. You can't see what that label is. That header row disappears. If I were to scroll to the left, we can see that that data is going to start to disappear. So I can't see what month. Well, what we're able to do is freeze that. All you have to do is just go over here to your headers and footers and freeze them. So I'm going to freeze both of them here. And now watch what happens when I scroll up here. We can always see that header row. And when I scroll to the left, I can always see the header column. So that's a nice way of always showing what the labels are. So that's basically the anatomy of a table. Now let's take a closer look at how we select our tables and cells. Let's go back over to my Mac here. And in order to select a table, I mentioned this in the last topic, but in order to select a table, I find the best way of doing that is just going up to this little circle here. Now, if you do not have a table selected, you're going to see that it is not showing there. Let's go ahead and add a shape here. So I have this shape selected. If I go over to this table here, when I click on it, what it's going to do by default, when I click on a cell, it's going to select that cell. What I want to do is I want to select that table. So what you need to do is you just need to click on this dot here, and now that cell is deselected and the circle is there. So if you have something else selected, you go in the table, you can click on this little dot to select the table. And then from there, you're able to drag it around as well. Now, you saw that you could easily select a table, or I'm sorry, a cell, just by clicking on it. So when I select this, that cell is selected. You can expand that cell, that selection. So you're going to see that I have a little hollow circle here in the lower right-hand corner, as well as the upper left-hand corner. When I drag those around, what it allows me to do is increase that selection. And then from there, I can go and format that, change the color, add a background, add borders to it, anything that is going to be applied to that selection. That's how you can select multiple cells. Now, what about selecting columns and rows? Well, in order to select a column and row, you just have to select the table again. So I clicked on it. My table is selected, even though I have a cell here, but that doesn't really matter. What we do is we just go up to the top here, and when I click on this, now what it's going to do is it's selecting the entire column. Same thing when I go over to the left here, I click on this, and now what I'm able to do is select the entire row. Now, if you want to increase the selection for this, you can do that as well. You just take these hollow points, and now I've just increased my selection for all rows, and you can do the same thing for columns. And again, once I have them all selected, whatever I have selected, I'm able to format it over here on the right. Now let's take a look at how we can format our tables and cells. When we format them, we can apply color, we can add borders to cells. We can even change the size of them. So let's first look at formatting a table. When we format a table, we have to select that table. So I'm just going to click on this dot here, and when I select it, I go over here to Table, and then from here I'm able to change the colors. I can go and hide the title or the caption. I can go and apply my headers and footers. I also can set what the font size is. And if I wanted to add an outline to the table, not to the cells, to the table, I can do that as well. And then we also have alternating row color. Now, if we want to resize it, what we need to do is make sure that we have the table selected. And then you're going to see that we have these little squares here. And then from here, I'm able to resize it. It's resizing the entire table, not a specific cell, not a specific row, not a specific column. If we wanted to resize a column or a row, then what we do is we go up to the column, and then if we go over to the right, once we select it, you really don't have to select it, but it does make it a little bit easier. You're going to see that the cursor changes here, and now I can drag that, and it resizes that particular column. We can do the same thing with rows. Click on it, drag it down to the bottom, and now I can resize that. We can also select multiple rows and columns and resize them all at once. Now, what about cells? Cells are pretty easy. You just click on the cell, and then we go over here to Cell, and I'm able to change the data format. More about that in a little bit. I can add a fill. I can add a border, and it's only going to add that border to this particular cell because that's what I have selected. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to make this a little heavier so we can see it. And now we can see that we have a border around that. Now I'm going to undo that. And what I'm going to do is increase that selection. And now that I increase that selection, when I add a border, you're going to see that it applies to all of that. So that's how we can go and add our borders. I'm just going to undo this so we don't have that border around there. Now, if you want to change the text, anything that we have selected here, you just go over here to text, and then from here I can go and change the font, make it bold. I can adjust the justification as well as the spacing. And then if you want to change the layout, you can do that as well. This is for indent and tabs. So you can see that I made this selection all bold. Let's go and bring it back. So again, basically you just select what you want. It could be a row, it could be a column, it could be a number of cells, it could be just a single cell, and then you go and apply your formatting to it. The last thing I want to show you is conditional highlighting. Instead of me applying the formatting, what we can also do is have numbers do it for us. So let's go over to this cell here. Now what I would like to do is set a condition on here to where if it's over 500,000, it's going to be green. If it's under 300,000, it's going to be red. So then I can easily see what the cells are by color. In order to do that, all we have to do is just go over here to Cell, and then you're going to see Conditional Highlighting. I select this, and I set up my rules. So my first rule is, if it is greater than, and we have a number of different rules that we can use here. I'm just going to keep it simple. Greater than 500,000, I want it to be green. And now we can see that it is green. And I want to add another rule. This one is going to be a number again. And if it's less than 300,000, now it's going to be red. And you can see that it kept it green. But if I go in here and type in 299, you're going to see that it turned red automatically. So I'm not formatting it, numbers is. That's called conditional highlighting. That's the basics of formatting our tables and cells. Now let's take a look at how we can enter data into our cells. What are the different options we have? Well, it's pretty simple, as you can imagine. All we have to do is just click on a cell here, and we just type in what we want. I can type in text, I can type in numbers, I can type in anything that I want in here. And when you look in the lower left-hand corner, you're going to see that it actually has what data is in there. Now, why is this important when you enter your data? Well, if we look here, you're going to see that this says January. Well, actually, this is a date itself. So when I click on this, you're going to see that it is set for 1/1/21. If I go to February here, this one is set to 2/1/21. So this data in here, depending on how it's formatted, may not reflect the actual data in there. You can always see the actual data, and you're going to see it says actual there. You can always see the actual data by going in the lower left-hand corner of whatever you have selected. So again, all you have to do is just click in there, and you can format or enter your data. Now let's talk about setting the data format. When you select a number or a cell, what you're able to do is go over here to data format, and you can set what that is. Is it currency? Is it a percentage? Is it a fraction? Is it text? Is it date and time? In this case here, this is date and time. If we look here, you're going to see under cell, it says that it is date and time. And what it is set to show is January. If I wanted to change that, maybe I want the full date in there, I can go and select that, and now we have the full date in there. I'm going to bring it back over to January. So we can set what is shown for that data. If I go over here to numbers, maybe I want to have this show the decimals. All I have to do is just click on decimals here, and now we can see that we have the decimals in there. So basically, we're just setting the data format. Now, when you first go and add a table, in most cases, what this is going to be set to is automatic. And it's going to try to figure out what that data is and then format it based on what it sees. But if you wanted to override that, and I override it quite a bit, you can just go in here and override that. Now let's take a look at autofill. What we can do is we can have cells autofill based on other cells. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and create a new sheet here, and we're just going to add a blank table. And let's just say that this here is a date. So I'm just going to go 1/1/21. And what I would like to do is have this next cell here be 1/2, and this one be 1/3. I don't want to have to put those all in there. Well, all you have to do is just select the cell, and you're going to see that there's this little yellow dot here. When I drag this down, what it's going to do is autofill based on that cell. So it knows that it's a date, so it's just going to go and autofill those. Now we can also do this with numbers, but what we need to do is we need to tell numbers what the pattern is. So with dates, it kind of figures out that you want to consecutively add the dates. But watch what happens when I put a 1 in here, and then I want to fill this in. You're going to see that it just kept it as 1. That's not what I want to do. I want to autofill it. So I have to set a pattern. So now I go 2, and I select them, and now when I drag them down, being that it knows what the pattern is, it'll autofill it. So I could do this with odd numbers, even numbers, any type of pattern in there. You can autofill up and down. So you're going to see I have a yellow dot there and then a yellow dot here. And this is actually an easy way to blank everything out. So let's just say I did have 1s in here. A little trick for you. I'm going to delete that. What I can do is I can just drag this, and then you can see it just erases it because it's based on nothing in there. So it's just going to fill it with nothing. So that's how we can autofill. Now in some cases, you may want to merge the cells. So what do I mean? Well, let's say that you wanted to have your data in one cell here. You want to merge these 4 cells into one. So then you just enter in the data. All you have to do is just select what you want to merge, and then hold down the Control key and click, and you're going to see Merge Cells. Click on it, and now this is one cell, and when I put a number in there, it's entering that into all 4 of those cells. You can also unmerge it. Just Control click on it again, and then you're going to see Unmerge, and it unmerges it. So that's how we enter our data into cells. Now let's take a look at how we add formulas to cells. The first thing we're going to look at is how we can add formulas from the toolbar. So I'm going to go back over to my sales sheet here, where we have some data in there. Now, what I would like to do is have a summary here, a grand total of all of my sales. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add another row here so I can place that in there. And I'm going to make this a footer row. This is where footer rows come into play. Just select one, and now this is a footer row. The beauty of this is if I go and add more rows to this, this footer row will always be at the bottom. And once I add my formula, it will always sum up everything in that column. So now I just select this, and if we go up to Insert here, you're going to see that I can insert some basic formulas. I can insert an average, a sum, a minimum, a maximum. So let's just go with sum. And now we can see we have a summary. Let's go and add one more. Drag it down, and we're going to go and add another row in there. And with this one, I'd like it to be my average sale. So I select it, and then we go over here to average, and now we can see what my average is for the month, based on all of those other months. So that's how we can do that from our toolbar. And now in addition to that, we can also do it manually. What we can do is we can click in a cell, and then if we hit the equal sign, we're saying that cell equals something. Well, what is equal? Well, basically we just click on our other cells. So let's say I wanted it to be this cell here and this cell here. So I click on it, and we can see that it is E8 plus E9. So all I have to do is just put my operations in here. I can multiply, divide, use parentheses. This is just a full-on formula bar here. So you can base your cells on other formulas. Now on top of that, if you're wondering what formulas you can use, when you go and enter in a formula here, you're going to see that the format area here turns into all of the functions. So from here, I'm able to see all of the different functions that Apple has with numbers. I get a nice definition here. I get some samples, examples of how to use it. I can search, and then if I want to insert it, I can do that as well. So if you're curious on what formulas you can enter in here or what functions you can enter in here, just go and take a look at all these different functions. Again, all you have to do is just enter an equals in here, and then all of a sudden it'll show. Last thing I want to show you is how we can paste formula results. So if I copy this, what it's going to do is it's going to copy that formula, and then it's going to place it over here. So if I paste this, it's going to paste that formula. So there's that formula there. Well, let's say I didn't want to paste the formula. I want to paste the results. Well, all you have to do is just, again, copy it. And then if you go up under Edit, what you're able to do is paste the formula results. And then what it'll do, instead of pasting the formula, it's going to paste the results. So if I were to change any one of these, this would not change. We can see that that is what the actual cell is. Remember, this is where we can see what that cell is comprised of. So it's just that number, while this cell here is the sum of the revenue. So that's how we work with our formulas. Now let's take a look at how we can organize our data. We can categorize our data or even create pivot tables. First thing we're going to look is how we can categorize. Let's say I wanted to see all of my sales by product. So I need to add a category in here. I have bicycles, I have scooters, I also have skateboards. So how can I do that? Well, basically, because I have them labeled, this is key to making it work. I would highly recommend that you label these. And then when you go up to the toolbar, what we're able to do is add a category based on that label. So I want to go with product. And now we can see all of my bicycles here, all of my scooters, and all of my skateboards. We can even go and add another category in there, so we can add subcategories. Now, once we have that category, what we're able to do is go and add a summary for each category. If we selected this cell here, you're going to see that we have a little gear here. When I select that gear, what I'm able to do is summarize this. So now I can see what each category did in sales. So that's how we work with our categories. You can also get to this by going over to Organize here and then going over to Categories. And the nice thing about this is you want to turn that off, you can easily just click on this and it turns the categories off. Click on it again, it turns it back on. So you can easily toggle if you want to see it categorized or not. We can also sort our rows. You can do this from the top here. Just click on the little caret, and then you can sort ascending or descending. When you sort it here, what it's going to do is sort the entire table. That's typically what you will have or what you'll want to do. But also what you can do, if you go over here to sort, you can sort it for the selected row. Most of the time, you're going to want to sort everything in that table. And then our last option here is for filter. Let's say I wanted to hide all of the bicycles. Well, when you go and add a filter, that allows us to do that. So I'm just going to go with product. And I don't want to see bicycles, so I just uncheck it. And now we can see we no longer see the bicycles. So that allows us to filter, and we can have a number of different filters in there, and we can add more as well, more rules, much like conditional highlighting. Now, the last thing I want to show you with categorization is pivot tables. Pivot tables are very powerful, and what I would recommend doing is taking a look at the template. So I'm just going to go here to New, and you're going to see that there is a template here for pivot table basics. I would take a look at that. But basically with pivot tables, what we're able to do is build a custom built shelf where I can arrange everything how I want it. Much like categorization, but a lot more powerful. So let's see what I mean. I'm going to create a pivot table from this data. So I click on Pivot Table, and now I just click on Pivot Options. When I click on Pivot Options, you're going to see over on the right, it pulled in all of my labels. So now what I'm able to do is categorize this just by checking. So let's go with date. And now we can see we have my dates there. But I don't have any data in there yet. We need to add some revenue, right? Well, if you look, you're going to see that I have fields, my columns, I swipe up, my rows, and my values. So right now my rows are set for the date. Well, I need to have values in there. So now what I do is I take revenue and I drag this down to values, and watch what happens. I can see them by date. Let's say I wanted to have product in there. Now I can see bicycles, scooters, and skateboards, and they're all organized by revenue and by date. And you can drag these around. I'm going to let's go with power. I'm going to drag this down here. And now we can see that I have my power in there. I don't really like that look, so let's just go and put power back over here to rows. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. So here's my bicycles, scooters, and by power. So all you have to do is just drag and drop these different fields around to customize your pivot table. And when you do that, it's not affecting your original table. If we go back over here to sales, there's my original table. Anything that I change here will be reflected in that table. So it's based off of your table, but you're able to reorganize it and recategorize it without breaking all of your data. So pivot tables are pretty powerful. Very easy to use once you just kind of go and drag them around. Again, take a look at the pivot table template to learn more about those. So that's how we work with our pivot tables. Now let's take a look at charts. How can we chart data from a table? Well, basically it works pretty much like pivot tables. We select what we want to chart, and then we go and add a chart. So you're going to see I have here chart. So let's go and select these dates here, and I want to select the revenue. So I have both of those cells selected. I'd like to chart that. All I need to do is just click on chart. It's going to add another object. I want to have a bar chart, and I can easily change it. So I'll show you how I do that shortly. And now we can see I have my bar chart here by revenue and by month. And if I wanted to change this, I just select it. We go over here to Format, and then from here I'm able to change the colors. I can go and add different options to it. I can go and add rounded corners, add gaps, and I can even change what type of chart it is. So if I wanted this to be a line chart, I could do that as well. So that's how we work with our charts. We just select the data that we want to chart, choose our chart as a new object, and then from there we can go and format it. Now let's take a look at how we can import and export as well as share and collaborate. First, let's take a look at how we can import and export. So I have these two documents here from Excel. If I wanted to import them in there, I don't have Excel on my Mac. All I have to do is just double click on it. Numbers will see that that is an Excel spreadsheet, and it'll import it in there automatically. If you do have Excel, what you'll need to do is just drag it onto the Numbers application, and then it'll import that automatically into Numbers. Now, when you do import an Excel spreadsheet, Excel treats this as one giant table. So remember how all this text is a separate object in Numbers? Well, in Excel, they're all in separate cells because that's just how Numbers work. So things are a little bit different there. Also, if you import a document, you may get some warnings. You're going to see that this particular document has some warnings. Links to cells were changed to links to sheets. Also, unsupported conditional highlighting were removed. So apparently Excel had some conditional highlighting rules that Numbers doesn't support. So you may see some of these rules here. If it's a relatively simple spreadsheet, you really shouldn't have any problem, but if it's relatively complicated, you're definitely going to want to go through and make sure that everything is all good. You can also export your documents to Excel. In order to do that, let's go back to Numbers here. I'm just going to open up a Numbers document. I want to export this out to Excel. All you have to do is just go up under File, and then you're going to see Export to, and then from here just select Excel, and it's going to export it out as an Excel document. And what about syncing? I wanted to open this up on my iPad or my iPhone. What I need to do is I need to make sure that this presentation here, or this Numbers document, is in my Numbers folder within iCloud. That's how you can share it among all your different devices. So, in other words, I go over here to iCloud, and then within iCloud, I'm going to have a Numbers folder, and within this folder are all my Numbers documents. Any of these documents I'm able to access from Numbers on my other devices. If you want to collaborate with someone, you can also do that, work on it at the same time with someone. In order to do that, let's go back over here to this document here. You go up to Share here, and then from here what we're able to do is collaborate, have two or more people work on it at the same time, or what we can do is we can send a copy. Let's go ahead and take a look at Collaborate. So I select Collaborate, and now I go and invite who I want to collaborate with, and it can be more than one person. So I select this, and we're just going to go with Dan here. And all I have to do is just make sure that this says Collaborate. I hit Return, and that message now is going to be sent to Dan, and what he's going to be able to do is open this up, and he's going to be able to collaborate with me. So he's going to be able to open this up at the same time, and we're going to be able to work on it at the same time. Now, there are a few options when you do collaborate. Being that I am collaborating with this now, what I'm able to do is see all of the activity. So if there's any changes, anything like that, I could see that activity. I can see who the current participants are. And what I'm able to do is manage this shared spreadsheet. I can even set it to where anyone with the link can collaborate with me. So they don't even need to have an Apple ID. Now you have to be careful with this one because anyone with the link is going to be able to access that spreadsheet. So if it's a really simple spreadsheet, you could do that as well. But typically if you go only people you invite, they do need to have an Apple ID. They don't necessarily have to have a Mac. They could collaborate with iCloud.com on a PC. So that's how we work with collaboration. Now, the last thing I want to mention is about templates. Remember, at the very beginning, I said that we could save templates. Let's say I wanted to save this spreadsheet as a template. All we have to do is just go up under File here, and you're going to see Save as Template. Select it. I want to add it to my template chooser. And I can call this My Template. And now, when I go and create a new document, I'm able to create it based off of my template. I want to rename this, Control-click, and I can go and rename it as well as delete it. So that's how you can create templates based off of your numbers documents. So that is a look at numbers. As you can see, it's pretty simple to use. At least I hope I made it simple for you to use. I think the key things to take away from it are you have your basic spreadsheet, which has your sheet, which is your canvas, and everything is an object. A table is an object, a chart is an object, a pivot table is an object. And then all you have to do is just place your objects around on that sheet. Anything that you have selected, you can go and format it. If you want to add a formula to it, just type in an equals. And those are the basics to working with numbers. I hope you found this helpful, and if you did, you may want to take a look at danstutorials.com. I have over 2,100 videos on that site. It is a membership-based site, but when you become a member, not only are you helping support a small business, it's just me working out of a corner office in my house, but you get all of the videos ad-free, you get complimentary registration for all of my online events, and you get access to an AI assistant that I modeled after an Apple genius. All this is included with a membership. Again, I hope that you found this helpful, and thank you for watching.